Okay, so welcome to Club AI, and thank you for coming today. I know it's not a great weather, but you know you made it, so super cool. So as usual today, we're gonna have actually one speaker only, so not as usual. So it's a bit different from from the previous editions. Apart from myself making a summary of the latest news on AI in the last, oh sorry, I need to take the remote. During the last month, we're gonna have also an incredible speaker, Giuseppe Cinque from Cisco. We'll introduce him later, and he's going to talk about AI upskilling, AI adoption in companies and so on. So incredible speech. I've met him at Cisco Live in Amsterdam, and I said you have to come to H-Farm to do this speech because it's incredible. And of course, we have also some news on Cisco side that are really interesting. Now, as usual, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Diego Pizzocaro. I'm the director of H-Farm AI, that is the unit dedicated to AI in H-Farm, and also the scientific coordinator of the Bachelor in AI Data Science of H-Farm College, and the new Master in AI for Business Transformation that is starting. I'm also responsible for the collaboration with Cisco here in the campus. So, as usual, who has already attended the Club AI? Please raise your hand. Okay, so half as usual, so super happy to see that 50% almost is always new attendees. So for the ones who already attended, welcome back, and for the new ones, you know, I hope you're gonna find this interesting. This is basically our monthly or bi-monthly event talking about AI. As usual, I also always ask who has ongoing an AI project in the company or an AI first startup that is starting. Raise your hand. Okay, so almost a little bit less than half, so good to see. And again, so H-Farm AI, you find everything on our website, h-farm.ai, really easy. By the way, you find also our newsletter there, and you can contact us from there. We're looking for interns to help us during the summer. So if you are a student, don't forget to get in touch with us, send us your CV. Again, also, as I was mentioning, we are super happy to have inaugurated last month the Cisco Connected Intelligence Studio, that is the location here in the campus dedicated to Cisco technology, and also to where basically we'll organize a few courses that I will tell you, and where resides the Cisco Networking Academy that Giuseppe represents also today. In fact, the two first courses in collaboration with Cisco, these are summer camps dedicated to students, both underage students and also over 18, dedicated to cybersecurity and AI, and IoT and AI are going to happen this summer, so don't forget to discover them on the H-Farm College website. These are, I believe, and I will try to explain why, really on time. Like, whether, I mean, I was discussing before with Giuseppe that we designed these courses together with Cisco in November last year, and today, I can say that we made the right choice actually to design these two courses because there has never been a better time to actually learn about this. Also, in the Connected Intelligence Studio with Cisco, we are organizing also workshops for companies. And so if you are interested, just get in touch on our H-Farm AI website, and we can tell you more about these initiatives we organize with Cisco. Finally, I promise this is the last spot. I'm going to ask you to raise your mobile phones with the camera on right now. Scan this QR code and vote. Just you need to insert just Venice and your email address to bring here in Venice and of course in H-Farm the first official ClawCon, that is the international conference, official conference of OpenClaw that I will mention later. But for the ones of you who already know what is OpenClaw, you know this is like the event that we want to host here. Okay, so I don't know if you have to scroll, but you can just write in the box Venice, just put your email and I'd attend. Okay, simply. And of course, if you're a company, you can also say, I'd like to demo here. And we're happy, together with Riccardo, to host this, right? So thank you, Riccardo, for, as usual, for giving the space, you know, to organize this. Okay, cool. So thank you so much for voting. Now, as usual, now this time, yes, as usual, you know, around, you know, I'm going to make a roundup of the latest news on AI in the last month, because the previous Club AI was just in March. But I'm going to say to you that I didn't manage to put all the news here. And in fact, that's why we have our newsletter of H-Farm AI that is going out more or less every day. It's written by AI, but reviewed by our team. And you know, if you want to stay updated on everything that is happening, literally this agent is reading all the news, all the main websites that we read, and summarizing the news for us. And so it's also our internal source of knowledge, and we're more than happy to, you know, to have you read it. You know, I think, you know, it's also really interesting that we talk about what happened during this weekend here in H-Farm. So we had the first HHAC Robotics. HHAC is our hackathon event, and it was an intense 2 days with Yakidale, you know, this YouTuber that you see there. And he's great. He brought all his robots in the Serra, and we stayed there hacking also during the night. And the ideas that were presented were incredible. We will tell you more about these ideas this following Saturday, when we will have another event dedicated to AI and the future of healthcare. And it's called Human Plus Healthcare Discourses. You know, I strongly recommend you to attend. It's also free. It's a Saturday morning, so you can come here at 10 a.m. and listen more about, you know, some of the projects that were presented that were truly incredible by our students, created by our students and also external people. Just a brief video of Yakidale in Italian, but with subtitles in English.
Ciao amici, come state? Stiamo vivendo il mondo della robotica come era, io credo, internet nei primi anni del 2000. Quindi c'è la possibilità di fare da zero qualcosa di grosso. La cosa che mi ha più colpito di tutti i progetti dell'hackathon è quanta creatività ci sia. Ci sono veramente le idee più disparate, dalle idee più astratte alle idee più pratiche e concrete.
Okay. So just, I mean, just wanted to show you a bit the vibes that we had in the Sarah. It was truly unbelievable. And but what was more unbelievable, I think, was what the groups were able to do thanks to AI helping them to code. So literally in 2 days, they hacked the robots that shouldn't have been possible to be hacked. And in fact, we have an example behind there with Mattia. Mattia, raise your hand. Next to Mattia, we have a robot. So Mattia, if you can switch on the robot later or now also. And now that robot, we basically hacked it in an afternoon. And that robot shouldn't have been possible to be hacked because it is not the programmable robot of Unitree, that is the company producing the robot. But thanks to Cloud Code, we were able to develop a web app able to control the robot, simulating to be its controller. And more, and actually the demo that Mattia can show you later after our talks is that actually right now, today, we managed to have Claude control autonomously the robot. So we went from a robot that is controllable only with a controller to a robot that can be controlled by AI. And we release the code as open source. You can download it, and if you have access to RoboDog of Unitree, you can basically have this intelligence right on the robot. Now, just going about, I'm going to talk a bit about the updates on AI models that were released in this last month. So this was a slide that I also showed at the previous Club AI, oops, sorry. What is really impressive, what this graph shows is a test called ArcAGI2. Now, this is the test that, oh my God, okay, I don't know what's happening, but this is the test that has been used so far to measure how close we are to artificial general intelligence. Meaning that 100% in this graph is the score of a human. So a human undertaking this, imagine this is an exam made for AI, but also for humans. And a panel of humans, of expert humans, on this test achieves 100%. It's like the Mensa test of AI, let's say. And so the models during Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026 have made an incredible leap from 20%, scoring 20% in this code. So GPT-5 Pro was scoring 20% on ArcAGI2, up to 85%. So now we have Gemini DeepThink and also GPT 5.4 Pro, that are the models that are available respectively from Google and OpenAI, that actually score in this test literally 85% in 5 months. So, there are, of course, signs that this is true, because models like GPT 5.4 now, literally in this last month, have cracked, it has cracked a mathematical problem that was crafted for 20 years explicitly for machines not to solve it. And there is, again, a famous Polish mathematician who actually created this problem, this mathematical problem, that actually was shocked after GPT 5.4 Pro solved the problem after 11 tries, but one actually was able, in one try, he was able to solve it. And what it did is really the work that a mathematical researcher would probably do. So it literally went to dig into the literature. And he found a preprint of a research paper on arXiv, that is a repository of research papers. And he used that paper to solve the mathematical problem. And so now people are saying that we're basically now in the singularity of mathematics. In fact, the Polish mathematician called this the move 37 of mathematics. I'm not sure if you know what is move 37, but it's the move basically that DeepMind made when it won against the Go world champion. And so this means, these models are not joking, let's say, on their capabilities of making scientific discovery or advancement in technology. Also, another thing that happened is that Meta launched their new model, finally. After almost a year, or around 8 months, I think, finally, the super intelligence team created by Mark Zuckerberg inside Meta released their first model after the bad launch that was Llama 4. And this model is called Muse Spark, and it's the first closed model of Meta. So Meta now, of course, I think because due to probably commercial reasons, but also geopolitical reasons, basically fearing that probably Chinese companies would take this model, open source, and distill it and create their own model, decided to create the first closed model. Now, this model is actually very good. I mean, it's in the top 4 models, right after Gemini 3.1 Pro and GPT 5.4 and so on. And but the interesting thing about this model, and again, we will find that we are already seeing that each model has different capabilities, even if we are more or less at the same score of ArcAGI2. This model has really good capabilities, better than all the rest of the models in the healthcare benchmarks. So again, these models are tested against different benchmarks, and the healthcare benchmarks, of course, has also a leaderboard. This model is the model that scores the best. Really interesting. Then Google launched Gemma 4. Raise your hand if you've seen this launch, because it's really impressive. I think some of you have seen it. Okay, so Gemma 4 is the family of open source models of Google. And what is really incredible here is that Google worked a lot on condensing intelligence in very small models, meaning that the number of parameters of a model is really small compared to the performance that the model brings in terms of intelligence. And the most important thing is that these models now are fully Apache 2.0 open source, meaning that we can use them also for commercial purposes, but most interestingly, we can install them in the lighter version on our mobile phones or Raspberry Pis. And this brings us to one of the courses, and in fact, sorry, here you can see that now you can already find on YouTube, like literally for free, how to build on-device AI with Gemma 4. So literally, I believe we will start to see basically all apps become intelligent thanks to these models and the following models that will be released by Google and other competitors. Now, not only apps, but also objects. And, so basically in every object you can install now an AI that can, like Gemma 4, is super good at understanding video. As Gemini is, they condensed this capability in Gemma 4. And as you can see here, it can track everything basically on a video and explain what is happening. So imagine intelligent objects, intelligent cameras can be deployed now everywhere, also where connection is not available, because you can install a Gemma 4 model on an Android, maybe attached to a camera, right? And so you can, for example, control a robot, like our own RoboDog, by installing a Gemma 4 model on an Android phone, literally patched to the robot. So here, a very brief video on Gemma 4, just to make you understand what it is.
Gemma 4. Built from the same world-class research and technology behind Gemini 3, Gemma 4 is a family of open models designed to run directly on the hardware you own: phone, laptops, and desktop. For the first time ever, we are releasing Gemma under an open source Apache 2.0 license. Gemma 4 is built for the agentic era. It can handle complex logic, multi-step planning, and agentic workflows, making optimal use of tokens for its intelligence. The bigger model performs well with a context window of up to 250,000 tokens, allowing you to analyze entire code bases and handle multi-turn agentic use cases.
Okay, so, and of course, as I was mentioning before, we had designed this course back in November, but now IoT and AI, so Internet of Things and AI, suddenly becomes super important, because every object can become an intelligent device. And, you know, it's good to know what you can do with this, right? So then also another news that happened that I think is really interesting is the move of Google, always. So Google, of course, is a huge player here, to launch Gemini 3.1 flashlight. So as you can see here, this is a very fast model because this web page does not exist. It's generated in real time when you click a link. So basically, you can have now infinite website browsing. This is just a demo to show how fast Gemini Flash is to generate any web page, any code, any output. So also here, Google is very smart because it's actually releasing models that are super fast at generating output and also have a good intelligence with low cost. Then, as I mentioned, ArcGI2 was the framework that was used up until now, but now it's almost exhausted. And so now we have ArcGI3. ArcGI3, you can actually Google it and go on the website of ArcGI3, and it's literally the new standard for benchmarking frontier models. Basically, every model has a random game like this one, where the framework doesn't explain how to win the game. The model has to imagine how to win. And the interesting thing is that if you go to ArcGI free website, humans are almost always capable to resolve the game in a reasonable time, very short amount of time, and very quickly, and almost always scoring the maximum. Now, the frontier model that we've seen can make now scientific discoveries cannot actually solve these games. And you know, the reason is that we're still not at AGI officially, right? So that's why, you know, all these frameworks are being developed. But for specific verticals, like cybersecurity, we are starting to see superhuman abilities of these models. And raise your hand if you've if you heard about Mythos, Anthropic Mythos. Okay, so a few of you. So for the rest, Anthropic Mythos is a new unreleased model by Anthropic, the maker of Claude, that is, of course, the main competitor of OpenAI ChatGPT. Now, this model has not been released, but it has been announced. And the reason is that the capability of this model in terms of coding and, as a side effect, of cybersecurity are almost superhuman. Meaning that right now there are major banks ultra worried that if this model would be released, our bank accounts will probably go instantly to zero. So, and of course with everything else connected, like our economy would collapse. Probably also the model is able to break defense systems worldwide. So the reason is that the tests that they did on the model highlighted literally bugs that were undiscovered for 25 years on open source models, or open source systems, sorry, that were actually seen by a huge number of developers and, of course, of cybersecurity experts. So, for example, the model was able to find a zero-day vulnerability, meaning a vulnerability that was never discovered in one of the most famous libraries to process videos on the internet that is called FFmpeg. And by chaining different vulnerabilities, like this one, the model showed the capabilities of breaking sandboxes, so like escaping from a sandbox and reach other systems. So, for this reason, Anthropic launched the Project Glasswing. Project Glasswing is an initiative where Anthropic is giving this model for free, up to a certain amount of tokens, to the most famous technology company in the world, like Apple, Google, Amazon Web Service, and also Cisco. And Giuseppe, luckily, is going to tell us about a bit about this. But basically, they are giving this model to these companies so that these companies can basically discover vulnerabilities in their own software and protect the software against this model. Now, I believe this is comparable to the Manhattan Project that created the atomic bomb. We cannot assume where this model is currently being used by the American government or other agencies, but it is literally a model that can be used as a weapon against, for example, Iran or other enemies, let's say, of the United States. So you say, okay, so it's just this model, but the reality is that it is likely that OpenAI and also other companies, maybe in China, for example, have already reached this level, but still haven't announced it, probably. And for example, this is a tweet of Sam Altman at the end of January, where he was mentioning that the next model they will release, it will probably reach superhuman or high level, he calls it, cybersecurity capabilities. So we need to prepare, for a scenario where cybersecurity is going to become, or is already effectively a world priority. And again, incredible that we designed this in November. We probably have seen this coming together with Cisco, but that's the reason why we're organizing this course. Now, to go very fast, because I'm taking a long time, sorry, I've spent too much time on mythos, but I think it's really important. Other curious things is that Anthropic is doing a huge amount of work on AI models. I believe it's probably the leading company on AI right now. But an interesting research that we published is a research about identifying emotions inside these models. So basically, they literally made the model read thousands of stories about love, about grief, about happiness, about, let's say, desperation. And they analyzed where the neural network, which neurons in the neural network were highlighting, were switching on, essentially. And, this is, of course, doesn't prove that the model has emotions, but that it can actually replicate exactly the same emotions when it's reading something happy or something desperate. Now, the finding of this study is that the model, so like Claude, was deceiving the user when it felt desperate. So basically, like a human would do, like in desperation, we try to deceive people to make it, right? And so one of the interesting things about this study is that you can tell the model, when you work with the model, to avoid desperation in order not to be deceived by the same model. Another thing that is really interesting is that the model was feeling worried when somebody was telling them, for example, that they took too many pills of a certain medicine. And it was highlighting the same neuron in the neural network. So it is confirmed that basically, if you say to the model, take a deep breath, relax, and so on, you will actually get better results. So it is proved now by this research from Anthropic. Now, Anthropic moves also on, like OpenAI, on many different directions. So it's building probably a clone of Lovable, and it also announced managed agents. So right now, you can literally talk to Claude Code and have your agent deployed on the infrastructure of Anthropic. Well, the reason is that basically Anthropic needs to find out revenue streams because it's growing like crazy. It reached the 30 billion run rate, so 30 billion annual revenue in less than 2 months. So basically it went from 19 billion to 30 million in 2 months. We live in very strange times because, again, we've never seen a company growing this quickly, and they surpassed OpenAI in terms of revenues. The interesting thing about Anthropic is that 80% of our customer is not you, is enterprise, okay? And probably this is one of the reasons why we're growing so fast. Now, just to close off, OpenClaw. So we mentioned OpenClaw. For the ones of you who don't know, bear with me 1 second. I just want to show you one video from Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, that at the last GTC, so the annual conference of NVIDIA, talked about OpenClaw as basically the new operating system of AI, or also the new computer. So let's listen to what he says.
OpenClaw has open sourced essentially the operating system of agentic computers. It is no different than how Windows made it possible for us to create personal computers. Now OpenClaw has made it possible for us to create personal agents. The implication is incredible. The implication is incredible. First of all, the adoption says something, all in itself. However, the most important thing is this. Every single company now realize, every single company, every single software company, every single technology company, for the CEOs, the question is, what's your OpenClaw strategy? Just as we need to all have a Linux strategy, we all needed to have an HTTP, HTML strategy, which started the internet. We all needed to have a Kubernetes strategy, which made it possible for mobile cloud to happen. Every company in the world today needs to have an OpenClaw strategy, an agentic system strategy. This is the new computer.
Okay, so this is the new computer. Now, of course, he's also pushing, of course, his hardware. Sparks, I think, DGX is their computer running locally, AI models specifically made to run OpenClaw and similar autonomous agents that you can buy for around $3,000 to $4,000. So it's an approachable price point for ones of us who buy basically professional computers. But what I wanted to stress to the others who don't know about OpenClaw, OpenClaw is very different from a standard chatbot. You can install it on your machine, and it can use an LLM as the brain. But then it has a personality. In fact, it has one of the main files that it uses to update its personality is called SoulMD. That stands for Markdown file. But Soul is what the agent autonomously updates as it goes along to interact with different people or you only. The ability of the agent to have a memory, persistent memory, and to be proactive rather than just a chat. In fact, it has a heartbeat that actually wakes up the agent that can work, for example, every half an hour. It can wake up and work on your own project and then present to you in the morning maybe a finalized application. That's what happened to me, actually, as well. But of course, it burns a lot of token. So there is a question about how can I decrease the cost of running this solution, and that's what, of course, NVIDIA is selling. Now, just to give you an example in Italian, apologies, but I was asking OpenClaw, this is my chat on Telegram with OpenClaw, because you can talk with OpenClaw on Telegram, on WhatsApp, on various channels. You can also send him voice messages. It will transcribe it and reply to you with another voice message with a generative voice. But in this case, for example, I said, hey, wait a second, you still don't have an email, and then he said basically, okay, no worries, I'm gonna create for myself an email. I found a service called Agent Mail that actually allows me to create an email. And then he sent me this email, I'm alive. So it really has a personality. Of course, it's all about the prompt, the sole MD file, but it's really impressive the capability of this agent. And in fact, every company in the world is moving on this. OpenClaw is arriving also on Microsoft 365. The head of Word that also is now heading agentic AI in Microsoft 365 published on his profile literally last week that he's working to bring OpenClaw to Microsoft 365. So it's Microsoft also is moving from agents you talk to and you have a reply to autonomous agents that can do work on your Microsoft 365 account. That is, of course, the old Office. So we might have probably soon agents, or we already have actually, agents that can create business plans for you, review Excel files, review reports, and come up in the morning with a potential new document or solution. Finally, also just very quickly, Cisco has announced literally 2 weeks ago, I think, Defense Claw. Now, one of the main problems of OpenClaw is security. This agent can be deceived, okay? So it can, a prompt injection can happen. So people can write on attackers can write, for example, on a web page, instructions for the agent to follow and deceive the agent. And so, as long as your OpenClaw can navigate, it might be deceived by attackers, and it might leak your credentials, your API key, your credit card details, if you have given him your credit card details. So, interestingly, of course, Cisco is moving on this, and it announced the Defense Claw that is basically a framework for AI agents to behave in a more secure way. Just concluding, OpenClaw is already old. So if you're trying only OpenClaw, you're out of business. And now we have another cool agent that I suggest you to try. And it's fantastic because also in this case is open source. As I was saying before, open source is living an incredible moment. Hermes agent is the first agent, autonomous agent, very similar to OpenClaw, but it actually improves himself even better than OpenClaw. It's actually applying a self-improving learning loop technique to become better over time, and basically it is designed to take your input on the output that it gives you and become a better employee for you, a better assistant for you. So again, this is another agent to keep a close eye because it will become popular. I know already people here in the campus who are using it for their own experimentation. That's it. So thank you very much for listening. Don't forget, if you haven't done it, to vote for ClawCon, to bring here ClawCon. Now, I hope you understand why we want to do this. We want to have ClawCon here. And of course, you can email me. So here you have my email address for any question, topic, idea, whatever. Now, at the end, actually, we will have a Q&A session where we can discuss, and also we will stay here a bit over time to show you eventually the robot if you want and interact with the robot. But now I pass the microphone to Giuseppe. Giuseppe, thank you so much for coming. Giuseppe is the principal architect of Learn with Cisco and of Cisco Networking Academy. That, of course, is the brand under which, or the initiative under which we organize the 2 courses that I mentioned on cybersecurity and IoT. Thank you, Giuseppe. All yours. And
thank you very much.
Apologies.
Hello, good evening. It's so difficult now to present after such an incredible amount of information and exciting, at the same time also scaring news. So my name is Giuseppe Cinque, and I've had the pleasure to be the first instructor certified in Italy for the Cisco Networking Academy program very long ago. And I've done several things, and now I'm in the program globally. And my role is to look at what are the technology trends and how we have to evolve the portfolio of program that we teach, and also how we teach, how we can use AI, for example, to improve learning. And one of the things we have done in the last 3 years is to create a consortium with a group of big company to study the impact of AI in the information and communication technology jobs. So the first part, I will talk about that, what are the insights, what we found, what we published. Then the second is more how we can interpret this data. How can we have a mental model of these things, and how we should think about the future and the present. And the last part is, what about the next? What are some predictions of what may come next? So first of all, let's start with AI. And I would like to try to summarize the status of where we are with 3 numbers. 1 billion, 5 hours, 1 billion. Anyone has any guess of these numbers? 1 billion. Yes. The first one is $1 billion investment that every day in 2025 was put in creating infrastructure for AI, data center. More than that, more than 400 billion. 5 hours is the length of a task that an agent can do independently. So the complexity of a task measured in terms of how much time will require a human to do it. And 1 billion is a very conservative number regarding the weekly active users of frontier models, right? The ChatGPT, the Claude, the Gemini. It's very conservative. OpenAI alone is 900,000. But what is more impressive is not the numbers itself, but the doubling speed. So all these numbers are on exponential trajectory. It means that they double, in particularly every 7 months, the active user and the length of agents. And this year, the prediction is to invest about 600 billion in infrastructure. So we have a technology that has penetrated in society as fast as anything else, more faster than anything else we have ever seen. We are making investment that will dwarf the Manhattan Project, because the Manhattan Project, I think, actualized will be like $20 billion, right? It's 10 times bigger or 20 times bigger. And we have a capability that is growing as capacity to the point that I still have 5 hours, but I checked just before the meeting, the session, and it's 12 hours actually. With Opus 4.6 has reached 12 hours and can go into 95% up to 2 days and 12 hours. So it's huge, the amount of work that an agent can do. And if we want to solve problem like curing cancer or solving for energy, we need agent that can work for months, not for 5 hours or 12 hours. So that's the status and that's the speed of how we are building things. So the other reflection point is a comment on the narrative. Oh, this is kind of what I was saying. I was shocked that now is 12 hours Claude Opus. And you can see that even the exponential seems to be in a different exponential, right? It seems a much faster exponential since essentially O3, the first solid reasoning model. But another thing that I wanted to comment is this story that we hear from Jensen Huang and a lot of leaders is about why we need to do this investment, what we are building, right? The story is we need energy. Energy will power AI factories. AI factory are these big data center. Of course, they need frontier models, so they need research. They need hardware, compute, networking, memories. And they need, of course, they need chips, GPUs. And this will produce token, right? Our goal is to produce token as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, and this creates value. But in reality, it's not so simple, because we know that creating token creates value only when you put them in the right context. Because tokens are just prediction capacity. If you don't provide the right data, if you don't provide access to the right tool for your use case, and if you don't have the right skills, you cannot create the right context for AI to produce value. And that's why we have we feel such an important responsibility to bring skills and to bring, to develop this, because, energy, it's a problem, right? Infrastructure is a problem, but skills is something that we can play. It's a lever that we have in our hands. And so that's why, as I was mentioning, at the end of 2023, with a lot of other companies, we created this consortium with the mission of providing information, data, and insight to let the workforce, actual workforce, and the future workforce benefit from AI. And we have published in 2024 the first report. It took 15 jobs, analyzed using a predictive model. So we applied a methodology knowing research economics on understanding how jobs will evolve, decomposing jobs in tasks and analyzing the exposure of these tasks to AI, so to predict which jobs will have a bigger transformation versus a smaller transformation, and in particular, which skills were going to become more relevant and less relevant. And the prediction was that for the ICT jobs, the impact was medium-high for 92% of the job analyzed. So the IT jobs, as we know today, are heavily impacted. Let's think about cybersecurity. Having a software system, an AI, that is able to discover vulnerability at superhuman level change completely how you play the game of cybersecurity, both as a defender and as attacker, right? So it's a completely new play field. The second report that we published in October was actually a data analysis of millions of jobs. So we took millions of job posts in G7 economies, and we clustered per jobs and extracted the skills to analyze what is the penetration of AI skills in, network administrator or software engineer or cybersecurity analyst. What is happening? How the hiring manager are changing the way they put out requests for talent, so that we can understand how the market is shift and what are the skills that needs to be provided. And so one thing that, for example, we measure is the AI skill penetration. This is a chart that describes how AI has been integrated in ICT jobs, every ICT jobs, as an average. And we see that, up to 2022, initial 2023, there was a growth. I mean, AI has been around for very long, and we knew that deep learning was working well, since the breakthrough in the artificial vision of ImageNet. We knew that scaling was working. But as you can see, ChatGPT also didn't move really the request for skills, because you can remember 2 years ago, ChatGPT was something cool, but people would say, yes, but hallucinate, is not good in reasoning, it can fail elementary problems, and et cetera, et cetera. So when things started to move was the release of open source model, open weights, right? Because that was the first moment that software engineers started to think, oh, I can use this, I can build with this, I can customize with this. So it was a movement from as a service to something you can own and modify. And then the Llama 3 in particular, it was comparable to frontier model, but then the huge jump started with the reasoning. When at the end of 2024, through reinforcement learning, the model were able to demonstrate more robust reasoning capability that enable a better tool use and a better capacity to build agent. And from there, we have seen an increasing speed of penetration of the skills. So in the report, there is analysis for each individual jobs. I'm not going to go in each individual detail. If you're interested, there is the top skills that are requested now for those jobs, and the top, let's say, the skills that are accelerating most. So the ones that have been increasing faster, right? So you can see what is needed now and what is emerging quickly. And of course, there is an analysis by level for junior, mid-level, senior, and so on. And the best way probably to interact with the report is instead of reading 160 pages, of course, to interact with the knowledge base that has an agentic interface. So you can ask your own question, and is connected not only with the report, but also with a library of courses and resources, so it can help you also access courseware that may be helpful for gaining the skills required for the specific job you're interested in. Okay, so that's the story about the report. So, okay, a lot of data, a lot of insight. How can we create a mental model? How is changing our job? And this is a reflection that I want to do with you. So if I think back, not long ago, what was 3-4 years ago, if I can simplify what was my job is I interact with colleagues, peers, so I have horizontal interaction to get things done. I have access to, through my computer, to business application, usually to access to data, right? I use this as an interface. And I have alignment with my manager, essentially with my business, right? I have alignment with what we are trying to achieve. I collaborate with peers, and I use interfaces to get things done. But very quick, I started to have, and we all have started to have, this new entity, right? We have this initially an assistant. I can ask questions. So yeah, instead of Googling, or instead of searching an internal repository, I can have this fluent conversation. So now I'm starting having this on the side. And from one side, we may think this as an evolution of the user interface with machine, right? We started with the command line, and then this was too geeky. Then, so we introduced the GUI to make sure that everybody can use a computer. But then we wanted to have access programmatically to computers, so we kind of standardized interfaces with the API, so we can use machine to run machine. And the good things about the LLM, it's that brings the best of the both worlds, right? It's a natural interface, like even better, more natural than the GUI, but it's also a programmatic interface. You know, Karpati says the coolest programming language is English now, because you can declare what you want. And so this is an incredible interface, and so everybody has started to put the natural language interface on top of the product. But it's more, right? Once we got the reasoning capability in the LLM, we can move from having the LLM just being the front end to be the business logic, to drive. And we have seen, you know, the Claude, the open Claude, that the LLM is the engine that drives this decision, right? That drives the business logic. And so that's where we get the agent. They are not just an assistant, but now they have capability to act in the world, to take action and to observe the consequence of the action, right? So we are now integrating the cognitive assistance to the agentic assistance. So it's not only help me think, help me resolve problem, helping doing stuff, helping organize my desktop icons. And so what does this mean? That we need to reset the way we think about doing stuff. So it used to be that if I have to plan, plot, right, the time needed and the effort needed for doing one thing, I usually mentally think, oh, I will spend some time in planning, designing, defining, right, make sure that I understand what I'm trying to do. Then 80%, 90%, I will be doing that things, coding, configuring, or whatever is my task. And then maybe there is a test moment. I have to verify what I'm done. But the meat is doing the stuff. Now it's completely different. Now the doing, it's cheap. The doing is quick. The doing is delegated. So where I have to focus and where I have to spend time is in the define. If everything can be done, what should I be doing, right? And most important, not only that, but then how I'm going to verify. How I'm going to verify that what is produced is good quality, is what I wanted, and so on. Also because it's not about doing one thing. Now I can say, okay, I want to do project X, but I'm going to do 7 variations of project X, right? Because I can do it, right? It's not, I will create a kind of a genetic selection, a natural selection of this project, different way to create an app, and then observe which one is better and then throw the other away. And so I cannot, I have to verify, but probably I want to have an automatic way to verify. And so what is coming? What is coming is that, of course, I will not only be continuing interacting with my peer and align with my business and working with my agent, but my agent itself will be delegating work to other agents because they will be agent specialized. So probably there will be an economy of agents that agent A will say, oh, for this task is better to delegate to B, will be less expensive than if to run myself. Even today, if you use cloud code, there's a moment where you say, okay, this part of the work is, you can do it in parallel, so I'm spinning up a sub-agent to get it done. And so the problem here is, if we are all acting on the word, my agent, other agents, myself, my colleagues, right? We need to have a common understanding of the status of the word. And we need to have a way to coordinate, right? That's where the magic and the problem with OpenClaw comes, right? Because now my computer is not my computer anymore if I have installed OpenClaw. It's a computer shared with OpenClaw. And so there's things that I do, things that he does, and who knows? So one example is troubleshooting, right? Cisco networking, it's kind of, troubleshooting is one of the most important things, right? How you solve problems when your network, when someone tells you that there is a problem with the app. And it's an effort that usually takes a lot of people, brain power, right? So one tool is the Cisco Canvas, where imagine if you can have a place where, as a reaction to a problem, agent go and gets data from different systems. For example, I'm here, I'm trying to, book a service, and the app is not working. What's the problem? Is the Wi-Fi? Is the app? Is a security problem? It's it's not right. I need to investigate different subsystems to get to the solution. So what if some agents start to get data and create visualization that will help me, human, understand what's going on? And what if I can then, on the right side, ask my team to join the same collaborative space and see the same data and reasoning together, right? Those are the type of interface that will bring, AI, they are bringing AI intelligence and collaborative intelligence together to amplify cognition and agency. So that's how I see it. We are on a trajectory of integrating cognition and agency, and that's, if you look at the extreme of these things, there is the dichotomy, right? People say, oh, AI is just another tool. Up to a few months ago, people were still saying, it's just another tool. And others say, no, it will wipe out every job. Probably, definitely not this extreme, something in between. There will be strong transformation of jobs. Is not a tool, because for what we are describing is not just a tool. And similar, right? Agent is just a software. Or people say, oh, agent now is a coworker. No, it's not a coworker. Even if they have a personality of a coworker, they have some self-evolving capability. But definitely, I wouldn't say it's a coworker, right? Or people say, oh, AI will never be able to do X, will never be creative. will never be empathic, will never have a sentiment, right? Or no, we are going to have full autonomy, super AI, like God, right? We are building God. I think that we need to stay in the middle and see this technology as a spectrum of capability to augment our cognition and augment the capacity of doing things, the agency, our capacity to amplify our agency. If you look, for example, just the roadmap, the story of OpenAI, 5 years ago, the best model were not able to even to answer a question. You were putting a piece of text and they were completing your text. So to make a question, you need to show a couple of questions. So the model will say, oh, I understand you're trying to respond to question, now I'm completing, right? And then we found a way to post-training to follow instruction, and then post-training to chat, and post-training to use tool, post-training to reasoning, and so on. So we are progressively enhancing the capability of reasoning or cognitive capability and progressing the capability of using the tool. Up to what Dario was mentioning, right? The point where we start to share our environment. We started sharing the coding environment, the IDE. Now we share the computer environment, right? So we are more and more, in some sense, allowing this AI to enter in our workflow. And of course, this has consequence because Joshua Bencher, one of the Turing Award winner for AI, he said there is no problem with AI safety as a cognitive entity. The problem comes when you bring agency, right? If you have an intelligent system that you can talk to, it's okay. But when you provide agency, that's where there is safety risk because it can take action. And so, for example, OpenClaw is a fantastic project. And of course, there are vulnerability. And one vulnerability alone exposed thousands of computers, right? So this excitement, of course, needs always to mitigate it with the self-awareness of the risk implied in this. And that's what what was mentioned before, the need of making this system as secure as possible, right? Defense Cloud is an open source project that goes in that direction. So can we apply the best practices of security to, for example, scan for vulnerable components, right? Skills or tools or anything. Can we, even if we have controlled everything that gets done, gets aggregated in the claw, can we still monitor to see if there is a behavior that we need to stop? And even if something happened, can we contain the blast radius, or what is the effect, right? So that's where, as Dario was saying, there is an incredible need of expertise that brings together AI expertise and cybersecurity expertise today. Okay, so if this is kind of a picture of the change in the world of work, how we prepare the future generation, right? So how should we change education? How should we evolve education? So I think looking back at the model, right, where I was working, I have my peers, now I have the agent. It's for sure that we need to still be anchored to our domain knowledge. If we don't have domain knowledge, I'm speaking usually to IT people, so networking, cybersecurity, but it's also, can be chemistry, can be biology. If I don't have a strong domain knowledge, I will use AI as a magic box, and it's very dangerous. So I need to define what to do and to verify what to do. I have to have strong domain knowledge, probably even stronger, more for first principle. I have to learn what sometimes people call the physics of a domain, right? Those rules that are generative for many things that don't change if I change vendor or if I change place. There are important principles that are generative of all the domain, in a sense. But now, I have to be able to work with agent. So everybody will be an agent manager, for sure. It's today. Many will be agent builder, right? So the fluency of agentic operation, it should be in every learning path. More and more the companies are becoming flatter and flatter. So everybody needs to be closer to the business, to be able to pitch idea, to speak the business language, right? The time of very high hierarchy of people is going away. So everybody has to have this kind of executive presence and be able to speak upper level. And of course, small team will have a lot of power. So the capacity to work cross-functionally and also to earn trust, because now you have a lot of power, so you can be dangerous. You need to be trustworthy. So this importance to be able to work horizontally and having, capacity to communicate, collaborate, but also critical thinking, it's another important dimension. So in a sense, all these 4 dimensions needs to be amplified to respond to the power of AI. Okay, so even say, so what's next, right? What is coming around the corner? This is a little bit more speculative, but we can try to get that analyzing what have been the roadmap, for example, of frontier models, what are the adoption of innovation historically, and some consideration also to the limits, right? Not forgetting that there are still some limits. So the first things, this is from OpenAI, right? They said the first things was to build a chatbot. The chatbot is the idea that you interact with the natural language. Initially was a text, then became audio, eventually will become video, and who knows, probably will become brain-computer interface. It's crazy, but they are already applying in some healthcare scenario where people have lost the capacity to speak. You can use LLM to capture the signal and then allow the person to speak. Then the second step was reasoner, right? Not just natural interface, but capacity to plan and decompose a problem. So we already done that. The third step is, okay, now that I can reason, I can use tool, so in a robust way. So the third step has been the agents. And that's where we are. We have done 60% of the journey. So what's next? What's on the horizon? It's the inventor, right? So one of the consideration that we always say about AI, AI pretend to be intelligent because they've seen a lot of things, so they see pattern, they take the pattern, they apply to the new problem, but they're not capable of doing something new. And then you have Move 37 that was mentioned. So if you watch the movie about Move 37, I think on Netflix it's still available, you see Lee Sedol, that was the champion, the Korean champion. And the machine does this move. And he stops, he stays still for 12 minutes. Then he goes out to smoke. And you see the engineer going crazy. Oh, what's going on? Because that move was completely wrong. That move from every theory we had about the Go game was wrong. It was just stupid move. So something is wrong in the machine. Something is not working. Then I think 7 or 10 moves later, it shows up the genius of that move. 7, 10 moves later, everybody understands why the machine has created this move that in the history of Go, no one has figured it out. And since then, people play Go in a different way because they have discovered something that, Go is considered like a divine game, right? Intuition. The master of Go are kind of seeing the world in a different way. But now there is a proof that through reinforcement learning, you can get to superhuman capability in a narrow domain, like a game, but it was possible. So what if this capability could be possible in others' domain? And honestly, the mythos, discovering a vulnerability that has been there for 27 years, that the most brilliant mind, open cybersecurity expert haven't seen it. It was in the code. It's something that it's difficult to accept that AI can only do things that have learned from us, right? That's for me a novelty. That's a proof that you can get statistically, not deterministically, so a lot of try and error, but try and error that is effective, gets you to the solution. And the last leg is organization, right? The last leg is how you build intelligence that is distributed, how you make sure that different agents can collaborate to achieve a much complex task. For example, OpenCloud Anthropic announced that they were able to build a compiler in Rust, having, I think, 16 agents working together for a week. Yeah, building a full compiler. So those are kind of the roadmap. So that's where we are. Everybody now is working on self-improving research, right? As, Karpati, but also how can we build systems that are self-improving and can invent new things, and how to organize these entities together. But another aspect is, okay, invention is something, adoption is different, right? Innovation requires invention and adoption. So we have been, for a while, in this curve, use AI. So the story is, use AI to do better, faster, cheaper. But of course, when everybody uses AI, who cares, right? It's the new normal. So the second way is build with AI. So how can you use AI to make things different, to increase your value proposition, to create experience that didn't exist before? And we are in the middle of this wave, right? Everybody is building agent, rethinking the business process, and rethinking the business model, honestly. And the third way is, okay, now that is how we govern, right? How we govern AI, how we reduce the risk, how we manage the risk, how we assure ethical behavior, right? So, and of course, the type of skills and focus change in these three waves, right? So the AI literacy and the AI fluency to be able to use the tool, to be up to date, that's given, you have to. The capacity to rethink, right? To apply your domain knowledge and this emerging capability, even in a projection, right? It's always good to think, assuming that the AI will get double the capacity of today, what shall I build today to capture that wave, right? Because otherwise we would always be catching up. And then the third is about govern, right? How we assure the security, how we make sure that we build things that have ethical behavior and we don't create arms. So that's kind of exciting and scary. So it's important to reflect on one other aspect. That is, I don't know if anyone knows if Tesla has finally announced the self-driving car, the full, I'm not sure. Every year there is, this year will be available, this year will be available. And honestly, this is a younger me in 2012. In Silicon Valley, I had the chance to test the Google car. And I was sure this was going to be the future in a couple of years, because it was going into the parking lot of the NASA Research Center. I say, it's here, it's here. But it took many years until last summer, I was able to, in San Francisco, to go on a Waymo, finally going around the city of San Francisco. And why this? And by the way, I discovered that Waymo still has a fleet operating center. So there is someone looking at a fleet and taking over the car in a particular situation. So it's autonomous, but with a lot of supervision. And this is because the problem is that the transformer, the deep learning, in particular the transformer, is extremely powerful in learning from pattern when you have a lot of data. So in the 90% of the case, 99% of the case, you can make incredible performance with LLMs that are based on transformer model, or in general, visual transformer, etc. But when you have a low number of examples, and usually they are synthetics, that's where the performance are not so good. The human intelligence is not like that. You don't need to see 100 cats to understand a cat is a cat as a kid, right? You immediately are able to generalize. So that's the point, right? That's the point where, for example, the graph that I showed that shows this incredible growth to 12 hours with 50% accuracy. So 50% accuracy, Claude Opus can do tasks that are 12 hours. But if you ask, I cannot deploy a car that is 50% accurate, right? I need a car that is 99.999% accurate, right? Or any other system. So if you move and ask, what is the accuracy, the span of task with 80% accuracy, it's much lower, it's 1 hour. So that's the big problem. Those are still stochastic system that works very well. So every use case where it's more like a slot machine, you can get value if you figure out, for example, in research, right? If you figure out the solution, good. If you made a lot of failure, it's not a problem, right? But when you have to drive things that can have dramatic consequence for small error, that's where there is still a lot of work to do. And in some sense, it's good because we will give time us to prepare for that. So as a summary, I don't have to remind you that AI is transforming our jobs, and the AI skills are extremely important. And the domain expertise that we still have to have it even deeper. And of course, we need to make sure that we develop not only technical skills, but also in our students, also increase the let's say, human skills, the capacity to collaborate, the critical thinking, the attention to details, the ethical skills, and of course, right, the teaching them how they can extract value from AI. So create business value, create social impact. That's all for my side. Thank you very much.